We're back, everybody. It's me, Maniac Malloy, and the one, the only, the inside man, our pal, your favorite, ESP, Eliot Shorr-Parks. Eliot, how the hell are you?
Man, I should be saying that about you this week. You got the Kylie Kelsey shout out. You're at the Jason Kelsey tournament, chugging beers with the legend. So yeah, I mean, the Maniac Malloy stock. Look, the stock is always high. I always tell people buy stock, but it's skyrocketing right now. So good to see you killing it this week.
I appreciate it, Eliot. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. The Maniac Malloy stock, it may have never been any higher than it is right now. We got to ride this wave. Yes. So let's get into it. Maniac, ESP, it's Bet the Birds. Dude, it's June. There's not a lot going on, man. It's going to be a tough July as we wait for training camp. One of the guys we haven't posted too much about, I mean, we've talked about him a little bit. I think A.J. Brown come out and talk about our boy Isaiah Rodgers. Let's just hear, what are your real outlook on what Isaiah Rodgers is going to bring to this team when it comes week 1 in Brazil?
Well, I think he could be starting. I mean, here's someone that didn't play in the NFL last year, but could make his NFL re-debut on Friday night in Brazil in what's probably going to be one of the most watched games of the NFL season. And
maybe in NFL history, dude.
Yeah, honestly, depending internationally, it could do really well. So I think Rodgers is someone that has a ton of upside. He's already played at a high level, a relatively high level in the NFL. Super athletic. I think he was very impressive in the practices I saw. Long arms. You can see that he's really good at keeping up with speed receivers down the field. He has great instincts in making jumps on passes to deflect balls away, but also he came away with one that he took back for a touchdown. So I think Isaiah Rodgers certainly is very much in the mix for a starting job. He'll have competition. There's Keely Ringo, Quinyon Mitchell, obviously. So the Eagles are kind of loaded with guys to be intrigued with at corner, but Isaiah Rodgers is just as intriguing and just as, I believe, talented as any other corner on the roster.
Only thing he's got to do is he's got to change that number. I think he's rocking number 34. He's got to get a little flashier number.
In person, doesn't look as bad. Look, it's the Cravon LeBlanc number, if I'm not mistaken, right? The Eagles have had good success.
LeBlanc number.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The Eagles have had good success with that number. So, yeah, I agree. Ideally, you want him in a 22, 21, something like that. But 34, he started well in it, so maybe it's better for him to stick with it.
We shall see. Well, Eliot, it's hotter than heck out, dude. It is steamy out there, and we're not even barely into summer. It's only going to get hotter. You know where I'm going with this?
I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Does the weather and how things are right now, does this really, really back up your theory that every NFL stadium should be a dome and that we should have a dome here in Philadelphia when they finally knock down the link, whenever that might be?
I mean, forget every NFL stadium. I think every stadium should be a dome, like every single one. I was at the Phillies game this past week with a bunch of callers in WIP, and it was awesome. It was a fun time. And Citizens Bank is unbelievable. It is aged well. It's an amazing ballpark, but it was extremely hot there. Like it was dumb hot out in the center field. We're out in the bleachers there. And I just think there's a world where we have the technology. Put like a canopy on top of Citizens Bank, keep some of the heat out. You can keep people cool. All the people that went out to that game, obviously had a great time, didn't win the game, which was not ideal. But I think with a dome, you would be less hot at the games, but also you would never deal with rain delays and you could just have more events there. So I understand that back in the day and, people like doing sports outside, but guess what? We have new technology. There's lots of things we used to do outside that we don't do anymore outside that we now do inside, right? Because technology has changed. And so I'm not going to sit here and stick with an old school mentality of outdoor stadiums just because it's how it's always been. I think stadiums will be better in domes.
I couldn't agree more with you. I'm all for the dome stadium. After going out to Detroit, that whole setup there is phenomenal. I really love that stadium. Would love to see if they one day somehow could turn the link into a indoor stadium.
Here's the other thing. If the link becomes a dome, it will become the hardest place to play in all of sports, not just NFL, baseball, hockey, basketball, college sports. A dome in Philadelphia where the noise from fans is kept inside and it does, obviously it doesn't go out because there's no roof, would be unbelievable. I've been at dome stadiums in New Orleans, extremely loud, very hard to play. You just said in Detroit, it's extremely hard to play because of the dome. Imagine putting 65,000 Eagles fans in there that have been tailgating, that are ready to go. That place will be unbelievable. So the home field advantage that Eagles would have if they built a dome would be the best in sports.
A lot of pros there, a lot of pros. My only con would be I love grass. I just think that sports should be played on grass rather than turf. So if you give me a dome, you got to have grass inside.
They'll figure out a way. They can grow grass at home. They'll figure it out. Yeah, that's what science is.
Arizona Stadium, I know it's a little different with the dry climate out there, but I know they've always had some issues with the grass. That's the only – figure that out, then I'm 100% in. I'm 95% in on the dome now.
In the Super Bowl, one might say they had some issues with the grass as well. So
you could say that. All right, staying on the Eagles. It's going to be talked about for probably the whole season, I think, until I mean, it's going to be, just face it, we're going to be dealing with this the entire season.
Yep.
Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts. Is their relationship fixable? Is it really that messed up?
I think the biggest thing people are missing in the Sirianni and Hurts discussion is that these two guys are very similar. I know that on the sideline, Nick is super waving his arms and yelling, and he's running up and down, and he's yelling at the ref, and he's, jumping into his own players to celebrate. And Jalen's not like that. Jalen on the sideline, very calm, very cool, doesn't show much emotion, talks to his teammates, but he is not the rah-rah guy on the sideline. But outside of that, I haven't covered a quarterback and head coach that are more similar than these two. At their core, they are football guys. I guarantee you, when Nick goes home at night, he's thinking about football. When Jalen is out in the offseason or he's out on a Saturday, he's thinking about football. I bet they spend almost all their free time outside of being with family thinking and doing football activities. They both come from families that are football families. Their dads were their coaches. Sirianni loves football. His brothers play it. He's close with his dad because of it. Jalen, same thing. So when I think of these two and the success they've had together, it is very obvious their relationship works. The way that they communicated the first few years was outstanding. They had one of the best head coach quarterback records in the history of the franchise through those first 3 years. So was the end of last year bad? Absolutely. Do they need to fix their relationship after what happened? Of course. But the idea that Jalen can't play for Nick because of how crazy he is. Jalen's played the best football of his life under Nick Sirianni. The idea that Nick can't coach Jalen because maybe Jalen doesn't respect him or anything. Jalen and Nick almost won a Super Bowl, a year and a half ago or whatever. So I know the relationship can work. I know that it can be fixed. And these two guys are much, much more similar than people want to say. And I think they can still be very successful together.
I was thinking about it actually driving in about Nick Sirianni, and there was some talks about Dom, and when Dom wasn't there, there was some issues on the sideline, and Dom is so important from keeping Nick from getting too excitable and yelling at his coaches or something like that. Do you see Nick maybe dialing it back a little bit since he's going to be under such a microscope from game one, from training camp, and they're going to be all over him with some of his antics, if you will, the lack of a better word? You think he's going to dial it back, or he's just going to be unapologetically Nick?
So I do think he'll dial it back, but I hope he doesn't. I don't think Nick should change who he is. Much like in a lot of ways, I don't think Jalen should change who he is. These two have been incredibly successful doing things the way they do it. We cannot allow the last 7 games of the season to dictate what has been a stretch of 40 games of winning way more than losing, playoff wins, nearly winning the Super Bowl. Nick doesn't need to change. Players love the way Nick acts. They love how he cares. They love the emotion he shows. And I would say to anyone that wants him to change, ultimately, isn't what you want to have the person on the team you root for care as much as you do? Nick and Jalen care. Nick really, really cares. I see it when I cover him at press conferences. I see it off camera. I see it just being around him in the time he's been here in Philadelphia. And if you take that away, and if you try to dial back his emotion, I'm not sure if that's a positive thing. So look, does he need to consider it if Jeffrey and Howie want him to, and if they feel it's better for the team? Of course, much like in some ways Jalen could probably be more vocal and things like that. So maybe both can kind of change a little bit how they act. But ultimately, these are two incredibly successful people. And I think asking Nick to become Andy Reid on the sideline is just simply not a smart decision.
I'm with it. All right, changing gears.
Let's do it.
Philadelphia 76ers. Clap your hands. Listen to the Clap Your Hands podcast.
Thank you.
It's a great show. You
Appreciate
and Jack Fritz do a wonderful job. I got to hear this.
All right.
Brandon Ingram. Would he be a good fit for the 76ers? Somebody they should target in free agency?
Absolutely. I think people are criminally underrating Brandon Ingram. Let's look at what this team needs. They need a player to come in and be an isolation scorer in the playoffs when Embiid is either hurt or not playing well, or Maxey, because of his size, can't be effective on the perimeter. The Sixers have lost in the playoffs because they don't have a go-to guy to go to. And again, for a number of reasons with Joel and Maxey still early in his career. Brandon Ingram has been one of the better isolation players in the NBA, according to the numbers. His numbers scoring in isolation, better than Durant, better than Donovan Mitchell, better than Anthony Edwards. I know that he doesn't do it at the volume they do, and keeping that up is hard, but he has shown that because of his size, his athleticism, his long arms, and I think what is a very good jump shot that can also be a very good three-point shot, he is a good isolation scorer. Not only that, he's 26 years old. These other guys we're talking about, Jimmy Butler's old. LeBron's basically retired. Paul George is old and will require a 4-year deal at a max level. The other benefit of Brandon Ingram is he's an expiring free agent at the end of this season. You bring him in, you see if it works out. A, you could trade him at the deadline as a valuable expiring contract if it doesn't. Or B, you're not committed to him for 4 years. If you sign Paul George for 4 years, you basically have to win the NBA title next year. If you don't, the chances are very slim you will moving forward. If you trade for Ingram and he probably only costs 1 first-round pick, maybe 2, you then have a 26-year-old to develop, to build around, makes the team better now, keeps their window open, and keeps open flexibility. I think the people against Ingram are missing the point. This is somebody who can help them in a lot of different ways on the court and keep flexibility off the court.
So I guess I misspoke there. I said free agency. This is going to require a trade, correct?
Correct. You would have to trade for him. He has 1 year left on his deal. So I would guess maybe at the most 2 first-round picks. I think you could potentially get him for 1 if there's not a lot of interest around the league. I think he's a great buy low, high ceiling option because of the upside at his age.
And you talked about window. This will open up the window if you get a 26-year-old guy that's a proven scorer in the NBA. Do you believe in the window closing for Joel Embiid, or how long do we have?
So I think when Joel plays, he's arguably the best player in the NBA. We've seen it. He's won MVPs, the 50-point game in the playoffs. When Joel is there and on, he's unstoppable. But I'm not making decisions around Joel Embiid anymore. I am thinking about, if I'm giving a max level deal, will that guy be worth the max, the majority of that contract? If I am trading 4 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks, is that somebody that I can build around and have on my team for years to come? When the Sixers were at their best in terms of making decisions, it was Sam Hinkie with the longest view in the room. I'm not making decisions this offseason to try to put everything into next year, because what will happen if they do? You'll give Jimmy Butler 3 years plus multiple first-round picks, and chances are you don't win the title. You'll give Paul George a massive amount of money. You'll hand the franchise over to LeBron. And what will happen? Embiid more than likely will be injured in the playoffs, and I'm worried about his body breaking down. So I think that when I look at who I'm making decisions for, Tyrese Maxey is more somebody I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the next 3 or 4 years as opposed to only next year, because that's when I think you make the mistakes.
I love it. Eliot, let's go get Brandon Ingram. You got me. I'm sold. We need him. We need him now.
If Maniac is in on it, how can we not be?
Co-signed by Maniac.
Exactly right. I love it.
You got it. All right, Eliot. That's all I got for you. Before we go out, though, I was hearing it on the radio. Somebody on 94.1 suggested that the whole month of July, they should just take off from sports because it gets to be so painstakingly slow. What are your take on that for what we should do in terms of covering sports for the month of July?
I think the person that suggested that should become a sports fan, because if you're a true sports fan, you don't go a month without talking about sports.
Can't
I mean,
do it.
people like our job is to talk about the Eagles. I love talking about the Eagles. I love talking about the Sixers. If I wasn't allowed to do it, I don't really know what I would do. I guess watch more reality TV. I mean, new episodes of The Perfect Match are out. I'm excited to watch those. But outside of that, I will never take time off from talking sports. So whoever that is, what's a wild take, but I will not stop. No.
I'm with you, man. That Eagle Insider of the Year, man. We got to start contributing to that, and it's going to be in the month of July. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're going to go where other men can't go, and we're gonna break in. You're getting that award this year. It's my goal. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it.
You're the true MVP. So whatever happens, happens. But I know your support means the world.
All right, cool. I'll be down with Jason Kelsey again in Seattle City. Maybe I can get some insider information and feed it to you.
Sounds good.
All right, Elliot. Another edition of Bet the Birds is in the books. We'll talk to you again next week. I'll dig deep for you, and we'll come up with some more Birds talk, Phillies talk, Sixers. You never know. Maybe a little Union, maybe the Flyers. We'll get crazy with it.
Look forward to it, man. Talk to you next week.
All right, Elliot. Take it easy.